Hello, everyone, and welcome to Code Conversations. My name is Matthew Sheahan, and I will be your host and facilitator for this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that our code would like to acknowledge that our association spans land across Turtle Island, which is the traditional territory of many Indigenous peoples. We honor them as the original storytellers and stewards of this land. We never forget their legacies, and may we learn well the lessons their descendants have to teach us for living on and with the earth. We will practice the sign of respect, acknowledge the rich history of these lands and Indigenous nations, honor the truth of the past, and uphold our original treaty, the two-row wampum, to peacefully care for the land and each other through our drama and dance teaching practices. And I, right now, am coming to you from the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Wendat Huron peoples, right next door to Tynega Mohawk territory in Belleville, Ontario. And what we at Code, the reason why we decided to call it a call to action was so that every single time we recited that in any situation, a meeting, a conference, a webinar, a workshop, was to have people think about what they can do to make tangible steps for reconciliation, not just me reciting words all the time. So today we're here to talk about the future of drama and dance. And first, I'm going to have all the panelists introduce themselves in whatever way they would like. So I'd like to throw it over first to Tessa Lofthouse to introduce herself.
Hello, I'm a secondary educator teaching in the territory of the unceded Haldeman Tract, which is to say Six Nations territory. I teach French and drama, but I spent 10 years teaching in Hamilton Wentworth in elementary French immersion, all sorts of things. I got involved in code as an undergraduate in the drama and education program, and I was hooked and have slowly worked my way to the presidency, where I learn more than ever from the folks that are around me. So I feel really privileged.
Amazing. And over to Heather Newman.
I'm Heather Newman. I'm speaking from up in Treaty 3 territory, which is up near Kenora, Ontario. I've worked at Kiewit and Patricia District School Board. I've been here for 15 years teaching drama and music and occasionally English and a couple other things. So it's a good time. And I'm the Northwest Regional Coordinator on Code.
Amazing. And over to Barry Freeman.
Thanks. Yes, I'm Barry Freeman. I'm an associate professor of theater and performance. I teach mainly at the University of Toronto at Scarborough at the undergrad level, and I also teach the graduate level at U of T St. George. And I'm really happy to be invited into this, Matthew, and to listen and learn from other people.
Amazing. And then to Jill Rahim.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Jill. I'm a secondary educator with the Toronto District School Board. I've been teaching dance and drama for the last 3 years. And before that, like many of you, I have experience in some other subjects, which is interesting to blend into the arts. I'm excited to be here as well. I hope I can offer a voice and insight into what it's like to teaching diverse students and just bringing cultural styles into dance and drama spaces.
Amazing. Thanks, Jill. All right, so our first question is summarize your drama or dance teaching practice in one word and why that one word. And I'm going to ask Tessa if she could share her answer first.
I think the word that governs most of my teaching practice, regardless of the subject area, is curiosity. Just the idea that students show up with so much, and when we engage with them, we want to do so from a place of openness, responding to what their needs are, but also just like attempting to foster that curiosity in them. And I noticed after COVID with students who were engaging mostly with online content for almost an entire year, when they came back to the classroom, they really had difficulty accessing that curiosity and questioning. And so I think like that's a huge focus for my practice is making students feel excited about learning, encouraging them to honor their own questions and to like be connected to the world around them, not just their phones.
Amazing. Jill, could you share your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I was thinking of two words. One was experimental, but I think I'm going to go with responsive. And I like this word a little bit better because I do show up with a plan, right? Like we know what's been done before. We know that some of it works. We know that some of it doesn't. It's important for us to really just know our material and go in with the confidence of having that understanding. But at the same time, I really approach my courses with a lot of flexibility. And I think that leaves a lot of room for the curiosity. I agree with you very much, Tessa, about that. And I think we can inspire that by being responsive to them. So sometimes there are lessons that students really like a lot more than I intended for them to like, or that I expected them to. And in that moment, I choose to lean into that. And I think that hopefully inspires them to continue finding the things they love the most while maintaining, standards and understanding how everything connects. So, yeah.
Amazing. Barry?
Those are great words. Yeah, it's hard to narrow down. You're asking an academic to come up with one word. I mean, it's a huge challenge. But I'm going to go with presence, not as in gifts, as in the other one. It's really most of what I think about these days, with regard to what's going on in front of me. I think a lot. I always have, I guess, but I think now more than ever, it's an obsession about thinking about what it means to be together in the room at all in a context of increasing virtual work and increasing digital life, ever encroaching digital life. What does it mean for us to be together? And it feels like our field should know a thing or two about the qualities of presence and being together and how we make use of it. How we develop, I guess, a critical disposition and sensibility around togetherness and connection. So that's my current obsession, anyway.
Amazing. Heather?
I love what Barry said about connection because I think that that is definitely so, so vital in our practice. For me, I think at our original council I had said cyclical, but I've changed my mind on that now to more community-based, particularly in the region where I teach because geographically we are so removed from other places and there's not as much opportunity at all for art students in the north. The idea of being able to create community within our classroom, within our practices, and have students then take ownership over the community and make the community inclusive and make the community be an ongoing thing is really rewarding. And then it just becomes a matter of how do we guide students in learning their empathy, learning how to connect with people, and learning to bring that together and create these safe spaces in places where they might not be able to find that ability otherwise, especially if there's limited resources or limited opportunities. So.
Amazing. I'm going to share mine too, which is disruptive. I have a tendency to use art and drama to disrupt, and not always to my own benefit when it comes to people's appreciation of that. But I think that we need to disrupt the narrative. We need to disrupt that flow. All it connects to every single thing we just said. Because I mean, when we disrupt, the online as we talk in this Zoom room, using technology to connect. We need to constantly be disrupting to question and to analyze and to think critically. All right, so next question is other than funding, so money cannot be an option, what is the greatest barrier facing drama and dance into the future? And since I went to Heather last, I'm going to go to Heather first.
Okay. So for me, the biggest barrier is something that unfortunately can't be overcome. Just speaking from my own practices and where I am and my experience growing up in the North and teaching now in the North, our biggest barrier is definitely geographical isolation, uh, which is something that can't unfortunately just be solved. That being said, I've personally noticed, although, the rise of like technology and things like that has led to some concerns, for me, I was just earlier reflecting on how during COVID, when everything moved online, that was actually one of the best for me in terms of professional development and able to access more resources for myself as a drama teacher and for my students to access things that were happening in other places. Because everything went virtual at that point, that actually increased our ability to connect with the world at large. So that was an interesting thing, for all of the red flags that kind of come sometimes with virtual work and things like that. it did in a way open up a lot of the barriers that we face being so geographically isolated from major centers for the arts. So,
No, and that's a huge barrier. I mean, like often think about, like where we can access things, what students have access to. But luckily, they have access to you in Kenora. So there you go. All right, over to Barry.
Yeah, that's interesting, Heather. I was actually going to say isolation in a completely different sense, in sort of a general social sense. Um, Geography is another layer to it, for some. But those, I see a lot of students in downtown Toronto where I teach who may be just as isolated as your students and feel as disconnected and as alienated, I feel sometimes, you know? Um, so kind of like attaching to what I had said earlier about presence, I feel like those are the things we're up against. We're up against, I think, I mean, this came up when we met in person, against a kind of checked outedness or a sort of absence, even when present, which is about attention and focus. I think the look, all of our attention has been commoditized by the kind of digital life we find ourselves in. It affects all of us, not just young people, but young people have come up in that world. I feel like it's acute. So when I think about barriers to what we do, though, I don't see this exactly as like a threat. Like I see this as I try to reframe this as an opportunity. Again, I feel like what we do is can be a refuge from that digital life and that isolation. It can be, and I'm seeing it. I see our classes filling up post-pandemic, more so than they ever have. I'm seeing real interest in finding different spaces, and that's given me a lot of hope. So there are always things to complain about around barriers, not just money, but the institutional kind of systems we find ourselves in can be really dispiriting sometimes in schools, and whether in my world in post-secondary, and my wife's a teacher, and so I hear every day about what that world can be like. But I also think like drama, dance, these things have been around for thousands of years. They've been through a lot of institutional lives. So I try not to worry about that and think they will find their way, you know? But I do worry about this absence or isolation even when with people. That worries me. That feels like a barrier that we're all kind of grinding through somehow, you know?
For sure. Jill?
Yeah, it really makes me think of the technology aspect, as great as it can be to make us feel connected. I'm finding on my end in my experience with it is it becomes a barrier for students to actually feel comfortable. And sometimes removing that technology from these communities where they're so attached to it in an unhealthy way. I find that the freedom does open up depending on how we bring it into the space or how we limit in the space. But just directly for the question, like for me, what I see as a great barrier is like how we define that space, how we define the theater space and how we define the dance space and almost how we market it in terms of who it's accessible to. So I don't want to just say like access to space because that's an entire topic on its own about where we can go to practice these arts and how we need funding or how we need a certain level of access to those spaces. But I think just even bigger than that, I want to zoom out to what we are really preparing students for in the future and how narrow that has been in the past. And really like students who don't fit the image, don't fit the style, don't fit the personality. Often I think if we market these courses in a different way and we actually say, well, your personality can work here, or your cultural knowledge can be valuable here, then the way we market it opens the space and then that fuels our pipeline to, get more people into it. And that's where I'm looking. I'm looking to see like how much space can we create in that narrow space because those barriers are far and wide. And I agree. I'm excited for the next question.
All
Yeah.
right, over to Tessa.
Like did not prepare for these questions again. So I'm just like absorbing everything people are saying, and it's like pinging for me. Um, so like even during the pandemic, Barry, everybody turned to drama and dance as the way to feel connected. So I agree with you. Like the engagement with these art forms is not going to, it's not being threatened. Um, and I think maybe like I've got two kind of answers, like a systemic one and a classroom level one that's a little bit informed by some of the teachers who were at the code conference. Um, so I think like one of the big issues is privatization and the push towards privatization in education, because drama and dance are never going to be attractive to people that want people to think less in order to have more control over them. Um, and that connects to Jillian's idea about the beliefs that we have about what drama and dance are also really informed by this private industry, like industrial dance and industrial theater, instead of like the everyday ways that we engage in those kinds of practices, the ways that we connect with each other through drama and dance outside of those industries. And of course, the education system like is constantly in conflict. Are we preparing kids for the workforce, or are we preparing them for full lives as human beings? And I think that influences how you look at drama and dance. And is there room for both? Because ultimately, you do want kids to see themselves having careers in those art forms to inspire other people to engage in art making. So on a large scale level, the push towards privatization, I think, is influencing the kinds of drama and dance that teachers might feel more comfortable engaging with. And then that limits who wants to be in the room because they feel like the boundaries are so strict around what kinds of performances they can give. And my initial response to this question, um, it's the idea that people are afraid of being witnessed. They're afraid of showing up vulnerably in classroom spaces. We can't stand in line anymore without our phone to make us feel like we're not giving a performance. Like being without your device where you can check out makes you feel like you're performing all the time. And I know that I recorded very silly videos on VHS when I was a kid and knew that nobody would see them if I didn't want them to. But kids now, their whole life is on the internet. And they're very afraid of being perceived in a way that could result in bullying or harassment or not being included. They have a whole digital persona that they're trying to create and maintain. And so when we invite them to come into spaces that require them to be vulnerable with each other, they are really struggling. And I think they also are not engaging very much in conflict as elementary school students. So based on that like privatization of education, we're pushing towards less and less like human forms of learning together, worksheets, just like checking off the boxes of what's in the curriculum. And kids are not solving problems together as groups. They're not socializing as much outside because they don't do that as a regular course of practice. They're I'm generalizing obviously, but then they get into spaces where they're creating together and there's these huge conflicts, and teachers are afraid of navigating or don't know how to guide kids through navigating. Um, so I like, this is what I'm kind of witnessing is kids don't know how to dissent. They don't know how to have a different idea in a group. They're afraid that they're going to be rejected. So yeah, this fear of like being vulnerable, fear of conflict, but then these like pressures from above that are telling people that they need to fit into certain categories.
Amazing. Only thing I want to add to that is I think perception is a huge barrier. And what I mean by that is because I agree with everything everyone said, is I think that what people perceive what we do very differently than what's actually happening. And that kind of ties to that whole notion around employability and like jobs and holistic human development, which all happens within drama and dance. But there's this narrow tunnel vision of like, this is what's going to get you a job, as opposed to like this is what's going to get you to be a human and be a participatory member of society. in a good way, who can think critically and make decisions and create with people, right? Okay, so now we're just going to go randomly to people with this next question, which is, what is the one thing that you really want to see in drama and dance in the future? And I'm going to go start with Jill. What's one thing you want to see?
Um, I would really like to see just more youth representation in the arts everywhere. Like, I want it everywhere. I want people to see what youth can actually do. I think just beyond the arts, the way that our world frames youth is also a narrow box. And the rebellion and the dissent and the frustration that they have are so valuable. And that when this is the only way they have to express it, I do think it needs to be valued somewhere. I hope that people find it worth it to ask a school to do a performance, to be at an awards show, to bring youth into elderly spaces, to bring youth into professional spaces so that the world can actually see the youth really are our future. And the way that they are critically thinking is really important to the way that our world is going to go. I think we just so much undervalue that, but as educators, when we are there in the school every day and we're on those front lines, and we actually see so much of what they deal with and how sometimes it can seem like they have such little control. When I see them take their power back, like all I want to say is like, I want the world to see this. Like, I can't believe what you just did. What you just did was amazing, and no one thought you would do it, but you did it. And how great would it be for the world to see? I just think we have a limited perception of what they can do and how amazing and connected they really are. And we do tend to see a lot of those limitations through our lens, and our lens as a frustrated educator or a frustrated parent. We see those limitations, but through performing arts, you actually get to see that they can be strengths and they can be secret skills and secret talents. And those are also the experiences and the memories that these kids hold. So I want to see them, be rewarded and credited for those.
Amazing. Tessa, throwing things up and throwing the whole system off.
Yeah, I was
Interesting.
afraid you were going to come to me next because that was such a good answer. What is one main thing you want to see in drama and dance in the future? Like, I want it to be valued. Like, I want people to demand, like, this is my dream, that people demand that their kids get access to it every week, in elementary at least. And that it's not like just follow this video of steps. It's really like explore your body and its vocabulary, explore the things that you want to express, like engage with deep thinking around tasks and topics. And like, I agree with Jillian so much. I taught grade 5, and those are like the smartest human beings I've ever met. You like, they can rise to the challenge. And teachers are so afraid that they're not going to like learn enough, but it's such a banking model of learning. So what would I like to see in drama and dance in the future is like it embraced as a methodology for every subject. Because unless the subject is grounded in humanity, it doesn't matter to the kids. Unless they have opportunities to express their opinions, to express their resistance, to challenge, they're checked out. They're just looking for what's the fastest way to get a good mark. But then also I want those subjects valued for their own, like for their own sake, the art of it. Yeah, and I want it to be some like a space that allows us to imagine the future. Like, these kids are not just resisting what's currently happening, where they feel like empowered to create what comes next. And to solve complex problems and to think through like what it could look like in a really hopeful way, because I also think like the truth right now is really hard. And yeah, I want it to be a source of hope for them.
Amazing. Heather?
Yeah, it's all these answers are so amazing. I'm like, yes, absolutely. I'm agreeing 100% with everyone. I think it's very, very similar in vibe. I think it's more just placing an importance on drama and dance education because really what it does is it comes down to the fact that our subject matter is so based in empathy and also going off of what Tessa said, has this ability to connect to all of these different subject areas, subject matters. It really is something that can bind pretty much any subject together. And I think it needs a little bit more recognition in terms of its importance, not only in other subject areas, but also in just creating good humans, and our ability to express ourselves and to have difficult conversations and to be confident in ourselves. It's wildly, vastly important for all of that. And I would love to see it elevated to the status that I think it deserves to have. So that's my feelings on it.
Awesome. Barry?
Oh, it sucks to go last on this one. I'm gonna try and get two answers in. Okay, my first one is, I mean, most of what I'm doing right now, my writing research and even in different teaching efforts connects to a few things that have already been said, and that is that I think we who do what we do have to be a part of and come together in a way to reframe the value of what we're doing. I think that we have, for strategic and understandable reasons, adopted a language of transferable skills and of market-ready things. And there may always be a time and place for that, but I think we have neglected developing different, and I think at this point, totally necessary language around the kind of ethical, social, and relational outcomes that flow from the work that we do. And so in my kind of research and writing work, that's my obsession. And I think it would benefit everything that we're talking about. And it's not as though there aren't, that writing isn't there, that theorizing, that thinking. It's not like it doesn't appear anywhere. But based on on work that I've done, I would say that it is backgrounded. And I would say that we have foregrounded other things strategically to our own detriment. So I think that's something we can participate in and do. And the second answer that I'm squeezing in that's kind of connected to that, is that I also believe that I want to see more sharing and collaboration, among organizations and among different parts of the arts education world, the moving pieces at the provincial, federal level, the moving pieces everywhere. It connects the isolation thing we were talking about earlier. The isolation also happens not just with individual teachers and or students and the life that they have. It works at the organizational level and institutional level. Our universities and colleges are in a relationship of competition because of capitalism. I mean, they're not in a relationship of working together and lifting us up collectively. And this hurts us, I think. I just got an email today. This has been on my mind that in the U.S. the major theater academic organization is called the American Society for Theater Research. You can imagine what theater academics are experiencing in the U.S. right now. And they just sent a message because their conference is next week. And the message was actually really amazing because they were talking about how they have gathered all the theater organizations that they can find around a table, and they're working together in a completely new way in a totally, totally hostile environment. And I think that that's unfortunate. That's the conditions it's coming out of. But I'd love to see it more in Canada too. I'd love to see us kind of getting interconnected better so that we can strategize around things, like curricular renewal, like that comes up at the provincial level and everything. Like this is a time when we need to be preparing, for every next challenge that's coming. So I think collaboration and sharing and getting connected so that we don't feel we're all always fighting battles like from our like, individual siloed kind of places in the matrix. It's really exhausting. And and so I don't know. I don't know how it comes together, but I'd love to be a part of more connecting.
I want to respond, like, because I completely agree with you. It's almost like we've like allowed the Overton window to shift. in your first point, we've allowed the conversation to become about marketability of drama and dance when we should have been more loudly saying, why does that matter more than like being together, being ethical, being like, we have like accepted that it's okay for that to shift. And I think we know that that's not okay. Like, I think we all know that that's not the real reason that we're doing things. But I agree with you, Barry, that having like conversation, like having like the vocabulary to be able to push back against that would be so amazing. Um, and there's like two other things that you brought up that I wonder, Matthew, if you're just gonna allow us to like riff off of this a little bit.
Hmm.
But like I
I haven't
I'm
stopped you.
so yeah, I'm so excited about this idea of like an abundance mindset. Like we're not competing for opportunities in the arts world to be the most important thing. We are like hoping to connect with each other in order to bring that abundance about. Like the more connected we are, actually the more that's going to happen because we have more people to rely on and more resources collectively than we would like fighting battles by ourselves. Um, and we need to fight those battles because if curriculum renewal comes, there's a strong chance that drama and dance are like not at the top of this government's priorities. Um, and we talked a little bit in the in-person session at the code conference about what that curricular renewal could look like. So I just wanted to put out there that one thing that I hope to see from drama and dance is a disruption of like canons. Um, and I feel like Jill might have stuff to say about that, like just listening to her approach to how to teach cultural dance um, is so expansive. It's so much more creative than and like respectful of where that those dances come from and respectful of the students. I'm really excited about like folks like her coming up with
Yeah,
amazing.
I was gonna say, Jill, that was an invitation right there.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate that, you were also a willing participant because it can be difficult to be vulnerable. And when we're thinking about like the future, the other thing, Barry, that you made me think about was all of the research that is there, but also all the research that is still needed. And if we're going in a society that's based on facts and these things, like we have an opportunity to get and encourage more people into this research so that we can, like our point is proven. And as educators in our hearts and in our practice, we know that we can see how much growth and how much inspiration, how much mental health support it actually brings indirectly, just by being creative and artistic and having that opportunity. But for some reason, when the world or society doesn't value that because the evidence is not reliable or not consistent, it can be tough for anyone to think that this is a valuable thing. But if we do have research that says academics go up when you're involved in something like this, research about confidence, research about mental health, research about dance and other subjects, I do think our point can continue to be spread that there's a need for this. And again, it's the cycle and it's the system is will we get the funding to do this research to be able to show that? Or is it the chicken or the egg? I'm not sure, right? It's we have to go in a little bit of taking an initiative to say, like, let's prove this so people who are non-believers can see it and they can see it there. And I hope that for the future, because dance research is never something I ever would have thought would have interested me. But when you see how far research can take an initiative, an idea, then what we can do to support that, including letting researchers in our room or encouraging people to see roots in dance as a researcher. I mean, you never have to touch the stage if you don't want to, but if you love it, if you see the purpose of drama, of theater, and that can be your career path to support that, I agree, like coming together for the larger vision and showing the receipts and what we got to show to say, here it is. Like, if you don't see it after this, then we don't know what to say. It's come into our room. And then let's see. So that's what I
Mhm.
hope.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone's saying, and I think that one of the biggest changes that needs to happen is we need to disrupt that system. Because I mean, if you look at just the current, just from a secondary perspective, So not even a post-secondary perspective. I mean, like if you look at like the graduation requirements for students, like it actually works against the arts in education because you have to have one arts credit to graduate high school, and you have to have four English credits. And I'm an English teacher as well. I see the value in English, but I think the whole model has to be revisited because I don't think it services students of all who are desiring all backgrounds to meet places. And I think it creates exactly what you're talking about, Tessa, where we're trying to market it, we're trying to sell ourselves in a way that entices people. Like I worked at a small school for 20 years where like if I didn't try to if I didn't constantly be advocating for what was happening, and I was the only drama teacher, so I felt that isolation as well, which was is what drew me into code and being an active participant in code because that community is so important and learning from each other is so important as drama and dance educators. And like I know that isolation. I know that feeling to need to want to draw people in. And then I also know the pain of seeing kids go, well, I can't be here because I have to do this, this, and this. And you're like, and at a small school, a really small school, there's fewer opportunities because like we had 500 secondary students, not a lot. And so like there are only very few spots where kids can even take the courses. Thinking of time, we're going to go to the last question because I think I want to leave it on a semblance of really good hope. We've had some really good hope, and even talking about barriers here. So we're going to jump to the question around what had the most significant impact on your teaching practice. Okay, so I want you to think about because I think that's interesting for people to hear about, and then get them thinking about their own significant moments. And we're going to start this time with Barry because he had to go last on that really awesome answer that everyone had before. So it's only fair.
So I scribbled down some draft answer to this, and I had five answers to this question, and I'm not going to give you five. So I'm going to give
Thank you.
you,
We don't have time for
and
that.
I know we don't. I'm going to give you number five. Um, and it's about, I think, the blessing and privilege of working in a super diverse context. Um, and it's really completely shaped what I am as a teacher. Being able to kind of count on nothing in terms of where people are coming from and what their experience, cultural points of reference, much less pop cultural points of reference. That ship sailed on me years ago. But like I really, it's been such a blessing. I find that I walk into rooms where I teach in Scarborough, and I have to start from like first principles all the time. And that's actually been such a blessing in my teaching. Like it's been wonderful actually, because nothing prepared me for that exactly in the very colonial, very canonical, very white, yada yada education that I had. I really had to learn how to have a pedagogy that really assumes nothing and finds pathways for people to relate to what is happening. And so that's just been like it's really totally shaped how I walk into the room. And I'm grateful for it. It's been really, really amazing. That's my
Awesome.
answer.
Answer number five. That was the fifth one.
Yeah.
Over to Heather.
Oh, there you go. So, for me, in terms of what's probably had the most significant impact on my teaching practice, is at this point now that I've been doing it for 15 years up here, being able to have conversations with my previous students on the lessons that they've learned and things that they have noticed and realized through reflection of what change drama and expressing themselves creatively had. The fact that I can talk to my students who now have become teachers, students that are now working in theater, who are working in production areas, the fact that I can actually have conversation with them about why and what specifically in my practices helped them and helped them discover this passion and this joy that they had indicated to me what I need to continue doing and what I need to maybe reflect on if there's things that I need to change. But for me, the biggest significant impact is seeing all of these amazing kids from my area go kind of forward and just get to be themselves in a world that when I got a lot of them when they were very, very young. They maybe didn't feel that they were connected to because we do feel so isolated up here. So the fact that now I've got all these students who are off doing amazing things and still connecting with me and still talking with them about what was useful and beneficial in learning drama is probably what's impacted me the most in terms of why I keep doing it and what I focus on. So, yeah, it's the cycle, I guess.
Well, you're right back to the cycle. See, it all comes around. Over to Jill.
So one of the most significant things for me has been actually like reconnecting and learning a little bit more about where I come from and the history that my family has. And I know it's like there are these words for it, like culturally relevant and diverse and all those things, but like I think my whole life journey and my whole journey as a student has always been to figure out like why am I this way and what made me this way? And that's part of the humanity aspect of it, or and going into why do I want to teach and why do I love to share knowledge and be in a room full of people who want to learn. What I learned is that if I was very disconnected from my family and myself, that it was very hard for me to find joy in the room and like recreate the type of community that I wanted. And it's also because I came from a place where at one point in my life, my family didn't talk about their past and they didn't talk about their stories or, too much about what happened before they moved to Canada. And even though that happened so long ago for them, the way that, the cultural baggage is brought over and is maintained, complicates how we see things. So I've been really grateful to have a lot of people in my family I can go to and start pushing their buttons and asking questions. And the day my grandma said, nobody wants to hear my stories. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm going to ask you every day until like you open up and like you realize, there are people who want to hear these stories and I am people. And for me, the way I was able to just return to the room is so much more of my authentic self, like grounded in what I know about myself, but also aware of what I don't know. I think it humbled me. It humbled me to meet students where they were at, to remember they have a family they go home to every day. They have unknowns about their life. I guess humanizing myself and humanizing my family and my journey. I hope it reflects in the way that I really try to humanize them because I think once that shift happened, like there's no going back. You can't unsee that and you can't just pretend that every move, every moment doesn't matter. And I think that has been a big change for me since I leaned into that and stopped being scared of the unknown and about knowing like half stories. Like that's okay. A half a story is still a story that we can work with and build on. So yeah, it was definitely a personal and professional journey together. So thank you for asking that.
Amazing. Tessa?
It sucks to go last on a question like this too. Yeah, I feel like I'm like Barry, I have like 17 answers. What has had the most significant impact on your teaching practice? I want to say like my students showing up knowing that I don't really know anything until they've shown me who they are. I consistently learn new ways of being because they force me to. Like I show up feeling like I know things, and then I have one student whose needs are just so different from what I anticipated. And then it's a whole new chance for me to learn a whole new way of thinking about my students. And the next year I'm like a little bit better at picking up on that need, but then there's a new need that I need to explore. So that's one piece of it. And then the other piece is like the folks around me that have invited me to learn more things. The code board invited me to learn more about my status as a settler Canadian by engaging directly with my neighbors and the stewards of the land that I was living on. Just like fundamentally shifted who I am as a person. And I think like also made me feel more grounded and more humanized and made me seek out my family's story of why they came to this land and why they engaged the way they did with being a settler. And then thinking about what my job was moving forward and how that like informs my practice with my students. And yeah, like I'm so privileged right now that Miggy Esteban is on our board and teaching us like so graciously about disability justice and ways of thinking through teaching that like humanize all kinds of needs and challenge notions of special education and just giving me new language for thinking about that. I don't know, code, but also my students. Um, yeah, like a community of amazing educators, and I'll give myself like just a tiny bit of credit that I also feel like uncertainty is informing my whole practice. And so if I'm uncertain about everything, then I'm going to look for really good teachers at all times. Um, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, if I were to answer that question, I would have gone on my journey of decolonizing and reconciliation as well. Like when I took over the department head of the arts and indigenous studies in 2011, and the biggest gap I had at that time was around the indigenous studies part. I was a drama specialist. I had a visual arts specialist I was working with, and a music specialist, and I formed many relationships with people in the community, and went to conferences, read books, went to workshops, learned from people in the community that fundamentally alter my practice. But I'd say learning from amazing individuals like yourself is like one thing that continually pushes me to be better at what I do. And the students, obviously the students. Amazing. Thank you so much, Heather, Barry, Jill, and Tessa, for your time this evening. That was an amazing conversation. If only we had all evening just to talk and continue down this an enlightened rabbit hole we found ourselves in. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.